Okay, folks, we are at that time. Good afternoon. Welcome to one and all, including all the staff. I'm just grateful all the staff are here because it makes it look like we have participation. I appreciate that. So we have confirmation of quorum. We're going to call the meeting to order. And would like to acknowledge that we are in the unceded territory of the Lakota people. And we have adoption of agenda. Director
Second.
Wally, Director Colburn, discussion. Was that you? Oh, I'm sorry. Director Mowini. Sorry, just habit. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Petition and delegations? None. Adoption of minutes of the previous regular meeting. Director Davis. Second. Director Wally, second. Discussion? Is there a reason why you're all the way over there? Is it something I said?
Giving you space.
So I'm just gonna shift closer to Dave here. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Business arising, none. Public consideration, none. Notice of motion, none. Chair's report, none. Okay, committee's chair's report that the draft minutes of the regular meeting of the First Nations Relations Committee held on April 26, 2023 be received.
Move receipt.
Director Wally, Director Von Esch. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Audited financial statement that the report from the CAO be received. Director Wally?
Second.
Director Mowini. Discussion?
If I can, Mr. Chair, so Local Government Act Community Charter requires regional districts to produce an audited consolidated financial statement annually. Results of that came back positive, but we have our auditor, Corey Vanderhorst, online, and he will speak to this for us.
Thank you. Go ahead, Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here to speak to you today. Do have a quick presentation, so I'm just gonna work on the technical here and get it all up and running. There we go. Hopefully you can see the first slide. So before I start, a big thank you to the Regional District staff, to Director of Finance and the finance team and staff throughout the Regional District for helping us with the audit process this year. We really appreciate it. And this year did have extra questioning and extra work around understanding the system. So a little bit of extra lifting for them this year. We appreciate that. I'm going to take you through some financial statement highlights. Talk a little bit about the audit and the audit results, and then we'll come back to the numbers at the end and look at some trends and ratios over the last 4 or 5 years. So starting on the financial statements with the statement of financial position or the balance sheet for the regional district, you can see the cash balances at the end of 2022 were $26.9 million. When you add in the receivables and some other financial assets, you get a total of $42.7 million of financial assets. The regional district carries its own debt of $2,031,000. And if you add in the accounts payable and other long-term liabilities, you get a total liability number of $18 million. Subtracting the 18 from the 42 million of total financial assets gives you what we call the net financial asset position, or sort of the liquid position of the regional district at the end of the year, $24.6 million, up from 23.9 in the prior year. And then the tangible capital assets, so the physical assets, infrastructure, water, sewer, buildings, any vehicles and other equipment being managed by the regional district have increased from $33 to $37.3 million at the end of the year. Accumulated surplus at the bottom of the balance sheet is $62 million, up from $57 million in the prior year. And I'll give you a breakdown of that number in a future slide. On the operating statement or the income statement, transactions through the year for 2022, total revenues of $22.4 million, down from the prior year's 26.7, and you can see below budget with the changeover in management of the Connect to Coast project and where the grant funding was flowing. That's the biggest impact on revenues being below budget there. On the expenses side of things, $17.8 million of expenses for 2022. So as we'd expect with inflation and other increases that you're seeing, up from $15.6 million, however, still below budget. The budget expenses were 21.7 and still about $4 million under budget. An accounting surplus then at the end of the year of $4.6 million. To unwind some of the adjustments that accountants put into the income statement, I like to look at the cash flow statement next. This is more in line with the budget and what you're looking at there, because that is on a cash flow basis. So regular operations of the Regional District had a cash inflow of $3.6 million. There's just shy of $5 million on capital spending. So that's Connect to Coast projects up to the end of the first quarter before it was transitioned to City West managing, as well as some of the early warning earthquake system, some of the capital costs in there. Debt being paid down on schedule of $53,649. And so a net cash outflow for the year of $1.4 million out of the main bank accounts. The accumulated surplus number of 62 million. The top line there is what we call the equity intangible capital assets. So that is the value of the capital assets on your books minus the debt associated with it. That is not a cash balance that you can touch. It's the value of physical items and depreciated over time. There's a small capital fund surplus of 122,000. As you can see, there's no change year over year. Appropriated surplus, so money put aside for future projects, is $2.1 million, and then reserves for future projects and future spending is $19.7 million. So the operating fund has a $4.6 million surplus and the total of 62 at the bottom. Shifting gears into the audit and the audit process, we're all wrapped up. Happy to be providing what we call an unmodified audit opinion for the Regional District. That is a clean audit opinion. We are satisfied that the financial statements are prepared in all material respects in accordance with the appropriate accounting standards for local government. We're ready to sign the report. Just board approval here today is the last step in our audit process. When we perform our audits, we look at controls in place at the Regional District to ensure you're getting accurate financial reporting. We sample transactions throughout the year. We don't look at everything. So to do that audit testing, we use a materiality number and for the Regional District for 2022, that was $895,000. So it's calculated as roughly 4% of your annual revenue. And then we look at every transaction that's larger than $895,000, so large capital project spending, grants, and the tax requisitions usually come in above that number. And then below $895,000, we would sample to give ourselves comfort over the financial statements. During the audit, we didn't find any evidence of irregularities, unusual transactions or conflict of interest issues. We're not specifically looking for fraud when we do a financial statement audit. We're not doing a forensic audit. But if anything came to our attention, we would be required to report it out to the board here today. Again, another thank you to staff throughout the Regional District. Finance especially does the heavy lift on the audit process and the audit work. I will confirm our independence. We didn't do any other projects with Strathcona Regional District that would impair my ability to give you an independent audit opinion from January 1st, 2022 to May 10th today, 2023. And I'll wrap up with a couple slides going back into the numbers. So we looked at the beginning at just at 2022 and how that year's results were. So we like to look at the trends to wrap up and look at the last 4 or 5 years and some key ratios that you can see in your financial statements and how they're trending. So we start with a sustainability ratio. This is comparing your financial assets to your liabilities, sort of a liquid position. And if this ratio is above 1, it means you have resources and reserves set aside to pay for future projects. If it's below 1, you are taxing or raising user fees in the future to pay for the past. So for the Strathcona Regional District, this ratio has been increasing for the last 4 years. You can see in 2019, it was 1.85. It's now up to 2.36. The last one we like to look at, we call it a flexibility ratio. It's really looking at your infrastructure, the capital assets you're managing, and what potential costs might be coming up down the line. So we look at the rough aging of the assets. We take the carrying value and compare it to the original cost. This doesn't look at condition assessment of the assets or what replacement timelines. It's just a rough measure of how old the assets are. So for 2022, the Strathcona Regional District's ratio is 63.9%. That's an increase from the prior year result of 62.5%. And this ratio has been trending upwards. In 2018, it was 53.3%, which means lots of old assets. So you can see your over 10% increase in 4 years, and some of the significant capital projects that Strathcona Regional District has been undertaking. I will pause there and turn it back to the chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Directors, who's first? No? Oh, we have a hand up. Sorry, Director Vonish.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at our debt levels seems quite low. I got two questions. One is, how does this financial analysis compare to other regional districts? Not sure if you have that input, but what would be your thoughts there? And then what your thoughts on our ability to take on more debt to do, for example, like large housing projects or something?
Okay. Thank you, Director. So with respect to the ratios, I'll start with that financial assets to liabilities one, which is just over, I think it's 2.3, 2.4 right now. That is favorable. A lot of communities that I'm working with are in the 1.5 range. This ratio is a balancing act. If you're getting into 3, 4, 5, it means you have a lot of cash reserves and you're not using it for projects. But healthy, above 1, into the 2. Most of the communities I work with are 1.5 to 2.5. So you can see you're sliding to the high side on that ratio. But that's not a bad thing. If you've got significant capital, again, it all depends on what's coming up in future years for significant capital projects. On the age of the capital assets, most of the communities that I work with are in about the 60 to 70% range. So at 63 and a bit on the percentage, you're coming up sort of in the right where most of the communities are. Strathcona Regional District, starting in 2008, relatively younger with respect to the actual existence as a unique entity on itself. But so that does tend to often lead towards higher numbers on that ratio, as you've had newer assets and had to do more recent things, although you did take over some older assets in the split in 2008 as well. But you're kind of in the middle of the pack on that one as well. And then the debt ceiling question, I'll attempt an answer, but I think there, I'd be happy if staff wanted to jump in as well. There's no magic number with respect to the right amount of debt. There's the balancing act of spreading the debt expense and the over the users and the residents will be using it, right? And some level of debt is appropriate. When you start to get too much debt, you see that financial asset to liability ratio dip below 1, which means you're paying for the past, as opposed to having the current users pay for it. So it's a little bit of a juggling act there. The biggest thing I can say around what the right level of debt is about the long range planning piece of the equation and looking ahead on asset management and what assets are coming up that are going to need significant replacement or work, and then having the plan into that of how is it going to be financed, how much in reserves, grant funding. You don't always want to be reliant on grant funding. If you have a government change at provincial or federal level, 1 year the funding is available and the next year it's gone. So you don't want to, that's a tough thing to be relying on that. So you're looking then at debt and reserves and current taxes. So all in the mix there is really what's that long range plan look like? And is a significant capital spending coming up in 5 years or 10 years? And you'd want to plan into that and have the appropriate debt to other sources of funding ratio.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? No? We want to thank you very much for your presentation, Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we're still on receipt. I'm sorry, Director Mowini? If they spelt your name wrong? No. No. Was it spelt like Colburn? No? Just checking. Okay, so we're still on receipt. Do we have all in
Move receipt.
favor? Move receipt. I think we did that. Yeah, we
yeah.
did second. So discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Optional to go in camera. Do any of the directors feel it's necessary to go in camera on this topic? Nope. 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 Okay, so we're going to bypass all that. And we're going to go right down to that the Strathcona Regional District Audit Consolidation Financial Statements of the year ending December 31st, 2022 be approved.
So moved.
Second, Colburn.
We have Director Wally, Chapman, and Colburn, so I'll let whoever's taking the minutes pick.
Sure.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you. Proposed Regional Fire Administration Support Service.
Move receipt from the CAO.
Director Colburn, Director Wally, discussion? Director Wally,
Yeah, I'll have a motion after receipt, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Director Wally,
I move option B, that the Regional Fire Administration Support Service be established as part of the General Administration Service of the Regional District.
Second.
Second, Vinesh.
Director Rice was quick on the draw there. Discussion. As part of the discussion, I want to thank the board for allowing me to take that back. I appreciate that. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Proposed Strathcona Accessibility and Inclusion Advisory Committee that the report from the CAO be received.
So moved, Colburn.
Second, Mawini.
Thank you. Discussion?
I think Renee will speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Hi, Renee.
Good afternoon, Chair Baker and directors. The report before you outlines the proposed terms of reference for the Strathcona Accessibility and Inclusion Advisory Committee. In April 2023, the board approved a regional committee approach to comply with the new Accessibility BC Act legislation and to improve the accessibility and inclusion throughout the region. The next step was the creation of a terms of reference to establish the committee and to recruit members. The proposed terms of reference before you were developed in consultation with member municipalities, partnering organization staff, guidance from Disability BC Alliance, and incorporated the Accessibility BC Act requirements. The terms of reference outline the purpose, composition, roles and responsibilities, the operating and reporting procedures for the committee. Once the terms of reference are approved, we will begin recruitment for the committee with the goal of having a first meeting in early September.
Any questions for Renee? No? Okay, thank you very much. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B is that the term of reference for the proposed Strathcona Accessibility and Inclusion Advisory Committee be approved as outlined in the May 4th, 2023 report from the CAO.
So moved.
Colburn. Second.
Second.
Mawini.
Director Rice. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Public engagement for the new regional service, that the report for the CAO be received. Director Wally,
Second, Colburn.
Director Colburn, discussion. Director Wally.
Yeah, I was kind of kicking this thing along through the last couple of meetings. I would just note that in the staff report, it begins by saying, and I'll just quote here, it says, when the board authorizes a feasibility study for a new regional service, the evaluation process generally involves a significant amount of consultation with community representatives from the areas that are identified as potential beneficiaries of the service. And that's exactly what my intent was in moving this along through a couple of meetings. I think that's great. I'm not so sure that I recall that ever happened. And case in point, on the transportation service that's before the board that we're considering as things go along here, I'm not sure how the community is consulted on this. The first awareness that Area A had of it is when it lands on the board agenda. And the motion there is to investigate, do a feasibility study, and carry through. I think it would be appropriate to consult with the communities that are going to be involved with that before that's undertaken. And I was thinking of different ways we could do that. It's complicated. So what I finally came up with was maybe the idea that after a committee such as a municipal service committee or electoral areas committee agrees to propose a new regional service, that they could refer it to the municipal community services could review it, refer it to electoral areas could refer it to the community services, and that way we'd have an opportunity to talk to our constituents and see what they feel about it. Then it would go to the board. So I don't know what you guys think about that. I was considering making a motion to that end after receipt, so that's my thoughts on it.
CAO?
Sure. So, I mean, there's many iterations of what it could look like, and I hear what Director Wally says, and I think it's variable on what that service that's being proposed is. So, just for example, when we look in Area A and we looked at a new fire service for the Race Point area, we consult every homeowner and we send them a petition. So that's great. You're not going to get more consultation than that. Then, and I'm not here to argue against Director Wally. He's got good points, and I'm just kind of saying, what does consultation look like? So when we look at a new service, for example, we have to go to the public. We almost always have to borrow money or requisition money, and we're required to put out an approval process. There's the referendum, there's petition, and then there's alternate approval. We almost always go with alternate approval because of the cost and practicality of that. And so the province looks at that as consultation, because you're sending it out and saying, this is what we're going to do. If you have a thought or opposition to that, write in. I agree that's not, engaging communities. And if we look at, current services, like when we look at Rec Rate, we've done extensive consultation with user groups. Or if we look at the regional fire admin that we just supported, we consult with the CAOs on that and your staff. Transportation, that was brought forward by one of our member munis, and we consulted with the CAOs and staff and groups there. So it's a mixed bag, and I agree it's complicated what consultation, satisfy you folks at the board that are voting. You're able to go back to your boards and councils and talk to it. You can defer items if you want. You can instruct us to do open sessions in communities, so I guess there's a lot we do. There's possibly a lot more we can do. And happy to, take direction from the board on what they'd like to see, more of the same. I don't know.
Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Leach. I think, just recognizing the fact that electoral areas and municipal areas are different. And electoral areas, I understand, I've watched this for 12 years. They always get outvoted because, there's only 4 of them. But they got a totally different take on this whole process, or all processes, than we do at the municipal level. So, I think, they're kind of like the you know, the little brother, the little sister, you know, we gotta allow them that place and you know, kind of recognize the fact that they're always gonna look at things a little bit differently than the rest of us at the table.
If I can, I think, you know, I don't disagree with that at all, but it works both ways in the sense is that this board supports of the bigger brother, if you will, a lot of regional services to support those smaller municipalities. I look at, you know, the biggest probably that's ever been done in the province is Connected Coast. That was an effort to support the smaller communities. So, you know, it doesn't always work one way, totally in favor or against. You know, some of that process that we have here, the quote unquote being outvoted, supports the smaller communities in many ways. Because if it wasn't for the bigger ones supporting, you know, we wouldn't have connectivity. And then everyone has different viewpoints. If I put on the table, let's say, you know, tourism or economic development, right, is, you know, everyone's going to have a different viewpoint, and I'm not sure it'd be consistent between all EAs and all munis. I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know if there is one single answer to it. It's complicated. It depends on the service, the size, what we're providing. So I don't know if it sticks within a policy or we kind of drive, we look at the hood ornament, whatever that says, and we look at the impact that have. The board can always direct staff on a certain issue instead of having one policy that says you must do this. Because, you know, for example, if I look at connectivity, again, a huge portfolio, we didn't really do consultation in the communities, if you will. It was so overwhelming that people wanted connectivity that this board decided on it. We went out, we did an AAP, we established our service, and, you know, we did the legislative consultation, but the board felt comfortable. So I don't know if there's a single answer, but, you know, we certainly have the opportunity, whatever that service is, to look at that individual and say this one requires that and the other. Maybe that's the solution. I'm not sure.
Who's first? You're second? Who's on third? Director Morwini.
Thank you, Chair. And I actually really appreciate Director Wally's thought about having Municipal Services Committee forward their ideas or recommendations to Electoral Area Services Committee. I think that's really interesting. When I had read this report and was considering community consultation, what had come to mind for me was that perhaps some level of community consultation could be built into the framework of the feasibility study when it's undertaken. And I'm not sure if that could happen or not, but it was some way of considering that there could be community consultation included.
Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. And just to follow up on what Director Kerr was saying, or to add to it, rather, is to, you know, it's, and I agree, it's not rural areas against municipalities, it's us. It's all of us. And if we can keep that in mind, I think we can continue on a positive note. In the policy, I noticed that we just have one definition of local service. And would it be advantageous, and this is a question, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but would it be advantageous if we broke that out to regional service, sub-regional service, and local service? So our regional service would be a service like general government. All areas are participants. And if we could, if we understood that, is when someone says it's a regional service, then we know we're all involved. And then we could have a sub-regional service, which would be like the Strathcona Gardens, where that would involve more than one area. In that case, the city of Campbell River and Area D, or a portion of Area D. And then a local service would be a service located only in one area. For instance, only in electoral area A. So it's a service only contained in area A. So we would know that it's just one area. Would that be beneficial?
Well, I mean, lots of things can be beneficial, and, you know, I'm not arguing the point. You know, it's about who votes on participating in the service, right? And the fairness lies in that, if you will. So regional service, we all vote on. Local service, which one participant, we all vote on that as well, because you can't have one director. So it's sub-regional service, is that, you know, 2 or 3, and where does that consultation rise? You know, we had a deferral of a regional service last meeting on the fire admin. That's the first time either Tom and I in our entire careers can ever remember a regional board deferring back to municipality to their council's discussion. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but I would say historically, regional boards, you've been appointed here to make decisions, and you make that. So everyone has a different viewpoint about what that consultation, what their authority, and what they're sitting at this table to do, right? So it's really, it is a difficult question to answer, and I'll bet out of the 14 folks here, we might have 12 different answers. So the authority's here, absolutely, to make decisions, and the authority's here to tell staff to consult in a variety of ways on whatever the service may be. And the Local Act says, you know, do what you need to do, have discussion, and call a question, and we're a democracy, and 8 hands in the air wins here. Some would argue that's fair, and some would argue, but I don't know if there's a better way of doing that. That's the system we have. So we do have latitude in there. If there is something specific like we did with fire admin, certainly we're happy to do that. The chair went to his council, they were happy with it, came back, it's all good. So, Julie.
Director Colburn first.
I hear the discussion around the table, and I hear the viewpoints, the guidance from staff, while I hear what Director Wally is saying, I do think that's an opportunity for a divisiveness. And I think that whatever we can do to avoid that is probably the best. So I understand that the reason it should, you know, that director wants it referred to a certain committee. But I also think that there are so many trickle-down things in this region, right? And so looking at something like the tourism service, right? That really benefits a lot of people in the area. The more people we have, the more economic drivers, the more farm stands are seen, the more, you know, that it really is an economic driver. And so I would be cautious about it, knowing that what each one of us does in our area has direct repercussions for others. I have friends that stay in Area D at hotels in Area D, like, you know, so I think that it is a real, this is a regional board, and I think the more cohesive and the more we can work together for the region is best, without having that, limiting that muni area kind of divisiveness. So that's all I would have to say about that. I don't know that I would vote against a motion, but I do have that in the back of my mind.
Thank you. Director Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Director Colburn 100%, and my intent wasn't to be divisive, but just a matter of an opportunity to give the other committee an opportunity to inform their constituents before it comes to the board. That's all I'm requesting. I couldn't think of another way to do that that would fit every situation, because every situation is so different, as our CEO has pointed out. But if it was referred to the electoral area committee, it's just a matter of information. I mean, there's no motion involved. It's just for receipt, and we can say, oh yeah, this is coming to the next board agenda. Gives us time to talk to community so we can get some feedback, so we're just not caught cold-footed when it hits the board, and what are we gonna do? That's all it was. So after receipt, then I'll make a motion, and the board can do its wish with it.
CAO.
No, I mean, I think that's information sharing, no motion, and I think that helps us all personally. You know, if, I don't think we've met this year even for municipal services, so it's not like that really happens that often anyways. But not to belabor the point, but I like to debate things with Director Wally. Is that in a good way, positive way, in that we have an upcoming one for a potential sub-regional service in Sayward for fire. So we're going to have a couple options. So when we talk about consultation, it's a tricky one because we're likely going to be given two choices. One, we have a fire service in Sayward. We can get a council resolution to support that from Sayward, or we can do public consultation to the community. So, we have, like he says, it's tricky in all manners. There's just not one size fits all, but I don't vote, but I think, sharing municipal services resolutions, I don't see any harm in that, certainly, yeah.
I personally, for me, I agree with what Director Wally's saying in terms of sharing information. I don't see a downside to that. I think it's very important that we had this problem in the past where people lost sight of the fact that we are a regional board. We are not an individual municipality or electoral area. So if there are things that we can make to ensure that we always focus on the fact that we're regional, I fully support that. I think that's a direction we must be moving towards. Okay, Director Wally?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't turn it off. I agree with what you said 100%.
Okay, we're still on receipt. On number 4, sorry, we
Can I
have
make a comment?
Director Vonish.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I really appreciated your motion in the last meeting, Director Baker, to have a deferral and to give some time. Certainly gave me time to be able to speak to people about the service. And I do agree with Director Wally that sometimes having 2 or 3 days from seeing what a service is going to look like to voting on it can feel really rushed. And just throwing out the idea, what about like having 4 regional services that are affecting everybody? What about just having like a 1-month automatic deferral from when the board sees it to when we actually vote on it? I don't know if that's a possibility or that just seems like that might allow us to be able to go back to our constituents, kind of present the idea, get feedback, and then make a sort of a more informed decision based on what our constituents are looking for.
CEO.
Well, I don't think we need a policy in terms of that's a liberty that every director has, a deferral. So, you saw it in action there last week, so keep it in the back of your mind that that's always an option. If you feel rushed or you want to do more consultation, deferral, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, all in favor of receipt? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Do you have a subsequent, Director Wally?
Thank you. I move that we develop a policy to have the Municipal Services Committee to refer a proposed new regional service to the Electoral Areas Committee before they appear on the board agenda, and vice versa, for Electoral Areas Committee to refer their proposed new regional services to the Municipal Services Committee.
A second, please. Director Colburn? Discussion? Director Dahl?
So the intention of this is to get public consultation before doing a feasibility study?
Yes.
Okay, I wouldn't support that, but I'll explain why.
If I can jump in, I didn't understand it to be that. So maybe for me, not that I'm more important than anyone else here, is that I would like to understand that motion, because as I understood it, if let's say a regional service came up at municipal services, I thought the intent of that would say, okay, great, they gave a motion. That motion would come to electoral area. Okay, that doesn't sound like what Director Dahl said. I think what Director Dahl said is before a feasibility study or anything is done, sorry, you repeat what you said.
I said that you want to have public consultation before feasibility study is done. That is what was said in the beginning of the previous motion.
Director Wally?
I'm probably a little bit confused on process. I thought generally what happened was, for example, the municipal services would come up with a proposed service, like the transportation service. Then the next step is it comes to the board, and there's a vote on, shall we proceed with, I thought that was a feasibility study.
Well, I think you're right. So let's
So
say.
before that happened, it would go electoral areas and we'd be aware of it, and that would delay it by about 2 weeks before it comes to the board. We're not gonna make any motions on it, we're just.
I don't care about
run
the
to our
time.
constituents.
Yeah.
Just, this is like doing a business case. And you do the business case before you make decisions. You're going to go to your constituents and say, would you like to have this service? The business case, which will be, or feasibility study that will be done after, will determine how much that service is going to cost. You're going to go to them without no idea of what the cost is going to be. And I know how much you like to raise taxes, so I would think it would be better to do the feasibility study and find out what the cost analysis of the new service is going to be before you go to your constituents. And then you either do what they asked at whatever cost, because you didn't do it in the proper order to begin with, or you have to go back to them and tell them that they can't have what you already proposed to them because you can't afford it.
If I might, Mr. Chair, the difference is that depending on whether they want to participate or not, regardless of cost, because cost isn't always the factor, that changes the cost. For example, in transportation service, if areas B and D, which aren't involved, were involved, that would change the cost. If Area A was involved, that would change the cost. So whatever feasibility study cost comes up with, if later there's some area says, no, we don't want to be involved, then that whole cost analysis is wrong. So mainly it's a philosophical thing that the electoral areas are more concerned about than the cost. It's not usually a cost factor. Like in the bus service, it's not a matter of cost. It's a matter, are they going to use this service? Is it going to be beneficial to them? Because the amount that electoral areas pay compared to, for example, Campbell River is minimal. So it's not always a matter of cost. So that's just the other side of the equation. I understand what you're saying, and that's valid too. But to do what you're saying is it's going to go all through that feasibility study, and then the next step comes back to the board for final approval. There is no midterm step, and that's really late in the game.
Well, I don't think that the feasibility study is the second last step. There's no adoption immediately after the feasibility study. That's when it should go out for public consultation.
Yeah, and that's what it does. That's correct. So let's just create a scenario that we want to do this municipal services, and we have this transit idea. Director Davis brings it forward, and municipal services supports it. So they say, okay, staff, go bring this to the board, a resolution that we explore this. So then we would take that resolution based on Director Wally's motion here. We would say, hey, this is a report and resolution that came to municipal services. It's on its way to the board. Before it gets to the board, we'll bring it to EASC. You can discuss it. So then when it does come to the board, everyone at the table is on the same page, and that motion has to pass at the board about the transportation study. So everyone here is collectively aware. And then you say, okay, look, the board supports a transportation study, a feasibility. So we go do that, and we come back and say, this is what it looks like, folks. And you say, okay, well, let's have a discussion, and should we think that's acceptable, that's when the public consultation starts at that time, and you can do all sorts of things, or you can just do an AAP and there's a consultation. So I don't think there's, the understanding I have of it is that, yeah, take municipal services, refer it to EASC. That will, just because of process, take a couple weeks, as Director Dahl said, doesn't care about the time that takes. Gives the EASC members the ability to discuss it, so when it comes to the board, we're all on the same page and we can have a wholesome discussion about it. That's how I understand
And
it.
vice versa.
So if I understand the motion like that, I'll bring a policy that reflects that, and if I've totally missed the mark, you tell me on that. Okay.
Go Director Chapman and then Director Kerr.
Chair, I have a subsequent after this motion.
Thank you. Director Kerr?
Thank you. And I just, you know, I think this kind of highlights the differences between municipal areas and electoral areas. With municipal areas, I can turn to Kermit and talk to him about it. We can talk, you know, amongst our council. We can go back and talk to staff. Electoral areas, there's just one of them. You know, they got, you know, they don't have the capacity. They can talk to staff here, but they don't have, you know, so I mean, I think what that does too is gives them, you know, kind of a little bit of time to discuss things with the community and their advisors in the community or whatever. But there are, you know, we're two different animals. And I think a lot of times we don't, you know, we just, you know, just one of us around the table and we think of ourselves just as single votes. And, but they're two different kind of animals that are pressed together in this regional district, so.
Yeah, I kind of see this as Director Wally's motion is to just for information sharing, right? To when we get to the board, it has nothing to do with feasibility studies at all. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my take.
That's how I see it, and that's how I'll represent the policy. And again, if I've got it totally wrong, you tell me when I bring it.
Okay,
But that's the way I'm gonna write it.
okay, so we have that motion on the floor. Correct?
Correct.
So all in favor? Opposed? Director Wally? Just kidding. Okay. Okay. It is, sorry, who are you pointing to? Director Chapman? Here's subsequent. Yes, thank you.
Did that motion pass?
It did. Director Chapman?
Chair, I move that staff report on methods to increase public consultation for regional services for further consideration.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Director Wally? Discussion? Director Mawhinney?
Could you reread the motion, please?
Really? That staff report on methods to increase public consultation for regional services for further consideration.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you. Number 5, emergency access to gate installment request, Quadra. All directors, that the report from the CAO be received.
So moved.
Move receipt or second.
We got Director Chapman, Director Mawhinney. Discussion. Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to report to the board that after we had the last report come to the board regarding the need for better safety access to the south end of Quadra Island, I connected with the woodlot owner, and when I let her know what was happening, she was really happy to procure and install a gate on the Woodlot Road on behalf of the woodlot. And the keys have been shared with the Quadra Island Fire Department and a neighborhood representative for emergency access, and I think that's a really great resolution that didn't require SRD involvement.
Okay, thank you. We're still on receipt.
Other than a lot of time, coordination, and report writing.
Other than that, further discussion?
But no taxes.
Don't. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the regional district take no further action in respect for the installation or maintenance of the gate at the end of Suit Hill Road? Is that what it's called? Okay. On Quadra Island for emergency access purpose. Motion, please.
So moved.
Director Mawhinney. Director Wally. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Appointment of local assistant to the fire commissioner. The report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Second, Colburn.
Second.
Director Wally, Director Colburn. Discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, the Office of the Fire Commissioner requires a local area commissioner to assist them with the administration of the Fire Services Act. That's traditionally has to be someone in the local area. Cortez is clearly an island. It wouldn't make sense for anyone off island. Historically, that assistant has been the fire chief. There is an interim fire chief there right now, and they are requesting that that person be appointed as the local area fire commissioner.
Okay, so we're still on receipt. Director Dole.
I noticed at the end of the letter for the interim fire chief, the date for him to become effective was November of 2023. So November of 2023 is like 7 months from now.
Good call on that. Yeah, I bet you that's a typo. Thank you.
All in favor on receipt? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the regional district support option, anybody? Want to put a motion
Move
on?
option B. Yeah, I'd like to move option B, that the regional district support option as outlined in the May 5th, 2023 report from the Chief Administrative Officer.
That sounded like option B.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, maybe it's just me. That didn't sound like what you read. Was it?
I'm moving option B. Isn't that what?
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm moving B there, the one that's on the agenda.
it says that
Isn't that what I
the
just read?
regional district support option B as outlined in the May 5th, 2023 report from the CAO.
No, option B is that we defer making a recommendation.
Okay, sorry. I would like to move option A, that the regional district recommend to the Office of the Fire Commissioner that Fire Chief Elijah McKenzie be appointed as the local assistant to the Fire Commissioner for Cortez Island.
Second.
Sorry, the options are mixed up in the report and on the agenda. My apologies, but it's
Yeah, so
B
I'll go
on
with
the-
option A
B
then.
in the agenda, A in the report. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll go with A on the report.
Director Vonish, and the second was Director Rice. All in favor? Oh, sorry, I forgot the discussion part. Anybody want to talk about it a little more? No? Okay. Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Insurance coverage for community nonprofit groups. Director Wally? Director Chapman, discussion? Director Mulwiney?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to staff for the information and especially Mr. Yates for the associate member program that the Municipal Insurance Association of BC does offer. I can see that the associate member program is not a good fit for community-minded nonprofits, not even the Quadra Island Community Center for a large extent. So I'm wondering that if the communication as requested in the motion previously, that the SRD submit an inquiry under the framework for capturing ideas with MIABC about the possibility of access to insurance for community-minded nonprofits, if that has been submitted to MIABC. The intent of my motion was to spark a conversation at MIABC that as they look forward, these community-minded nonprofits could be considered.
Mr. Yates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have had these discussions with MIABC, not just recently, but also in the past. They do not offer any programs to non-members of the MIABC, which is local governments, including regional districts. The question was raised whether they would consider that, and basically have been told, no, it's not something they're empowered to do under their constitution, to be looking at coverage for non-members. They're not an insurance company. They reinsurance, they find insurance for their members through a cooperative arrangement. That is their mission in life. We can certainly keep on this with them and see if that will take us anywhere. I doubt it will. If we're looking for this regional district to somehow extend its insurance umbrella, To other groups, the only way that I'm aware to do that would be to have those services that they deliver become regional district services. And that's as much as we've been able to find out. We can certainly bring back a report that speaks to all of these issues, but that is where we're at today.
Now, just to jump in on, I know that if you're a member of the Chamber of Commerce, there are assurance that is provided as well through the Chamber. Director Dahl?
Just to throw it out there, to follow up on what Mr. Yates said, the Canada Day Committee was having a hard time getting insurance this year. And I don't know where they ended up, but I know they spent a fair bit of time with Clinton Crook from the city, who, that's what he does, is insurance and liability assessment. So it would be good to talk to him. But I think, similar to what Mr. Yates just said, MIABC said that if the municipality wanted to carry the insurance, we had to be the ones organizing Canada Day. So we did consider it being done under Campbell River Live Streets through the rec department. But I think that for this year, they found a way to do it, but it's not going to last. Yeah, every year, apparently, it's getting worse and worse. So talking to Clinton might be a good resource.
That was on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Parkland dedication, April Point. That the Director Wally,
Second, Colburn.
Director Colburn, discussion? Director Moini? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And electoral areas only, that the revised proposal for parkland dedication from Maple Point Developments be accepted as outlined on May 10th, 2023 report from the CAO. Sure. But,
We don't have a mover on the motion.
oh, we don't have a mover on the motion yet, sorry. So we have electoral areas only. There's a motion.
There's no mover of the motion yet.
Then the motion is defeated. Is that not correct?
So this comes from
Technically, it'd
Electoral
never be
Area
made.
Services Committee that had supported the motion. Correct? Okay, I'll just let her ask a question.
Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, I noticed that this report doesn't contain the previous iterations of the report that generally reports carry along with them. And this is an updated version of an application or a park proposal, but there were no previous iterations of the park proposal included in the report. And so I was curious if somebody from staff could explain to me the material differences between this iteration of the proposed park and earlier versions as to the size and the walkability. I noticed that most of it is a wetland, which are critical for percolating water into the aquifer, and I appreciate that the wetland is being preserved as a park. I am curious how this trail will be built and also maintained. And I'm further curious if a group such as Quadra Island Trails Committee, which is an active group on Quadra Island with much experience designing lines of trails, if they've been consulted or if there has been other ground truthing from staff or locals, or if it has been mainly from the proponent and designer, which states there in Vancouver.
Thank you through the chair to the director. I can't speak to why the previous reports weren't attached to this report, but in any event, the size of the parcel that is being proposed is the same as previously. There's a small pinch point which has been created as part of additional surveying and current road siting and a bluff. So the proposal has been amended slightly to include, to allow that road and bluff to be outside of the park area. But outside of that, the area, 2.78 hectares, remains the same, as does the overall trail length of 1,430 meters. There's no proposal at this time to construct trail, as this is a requirement for park dedication only. The regional district is not in the position to require development of trails at this time. This is outstanding park dedication as part of a previous subdivision and a current covenant that is on title requiring them to provide this park dedication prior to any further developments in the area. So other than staff ground truthing, we have not consulted with anyone else at this point. That would happen provided we receive additional applications from the proponent for future dedication or development over those lands.
May I have a subsequent?
We don't have a motion. We don't have a motion at this point.
Oh, so I can ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, thank
Continue
you.
on.
Great. Well, I was just curious because the maps really highlight a lot of trails. And you're talking about 1,400 meters of trails, but then you're also saying that there is no requirement for the trails to actually be built. So,
Correct.
okay.
So that would happen down the road if additional development was to occur as part of a rezoning application. Staff could ask for that as a community amenity, or if future development doesn't occur in the near future, we could put forward a proposal to develop the trails through the Park Service, through a capital project, and funded either through requisition or gas tax.
Okay, so I did verbalize B. Director Wally?
I was just going to suggest to Director Mawhinney, if you want to kick the cat around some more, you can always refer it back to electoral areas, or if not, you can make the motion.
I will move that the revised proposal for parkland dedication from Maple Point Developments be accepted as outlined in the May 10th report from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Electoral areas only. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. City of Campbell River Development Proposal Referral, Gervais Parkway Urban Containment Boundary Expansion. For the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Director Dahl, Director Colburn, discussion. Director Rice.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've taken a good look at this report and quite a bit of concern. I can appreciate that the regional district as a whole may not have concerns, but there's about 200 households in my community that will have concerns. When I take a look at the report, I see something that looks very vague. It's very difficult to determine what is being proposed here. I see that there's going to be an exit point on Crawford Road. Crawford Road can't handle any more traffic at this point in time. I'm not sure if the city of Campbell River is aware that the traffic conditions on Crawford Road are pretty grim, particularly in the morning time. The school there is already at capacity. There's cars that are lining up 30 deep. Takes them 35 minutes to make a left-hand turn, to get out of Crawford. So what we have is we have cars that take the back roads and use Ingalls. So there's lots of concerns, and I'm just not seeing a whole lot of information in this proposal that would permit me to vote. So I'm going to be voting no on it. Thank you.
CAO?
Just a little background on it. This is a kind of a challenging issue for the landowner, the potential developer, in that how much time, money, and effort do they put into a development proposal that they do not have within the urban containment boundary? So it's a bit of the cart before the horse. There's a lot to come after it. I think the city expanding an urban containment boundary doesn't make it a fait accompli of, what they're going to do. And so it is tricky. I understand your concerns in that, but then from the development perspective, do you put hundreds of thousands or millions into something you don't even know? For example, the city staff right now wouldn't even be engaged with the developer because they'd say, here's the line, there's nothing for us to discuss about, you're not in the urban containment boundary. So do they create a proposal and spend all this money and give it to city staff, and city staff say, you're not in the urban containment? So it's a little bit of the cart before the horse, and I understand your concerns, I'm sure the city does too. However, that line has to be moved first before a kind of a discussion could be entertained.
Again, I appreciate the comments, but the area has known that this has been on the books for how many years? So I would think that, you know, first impressions are everything. First impressions on this report is that there's not a whole lot of information that's going to set people's minds at ease. You know, when this becomes public knowledge, I mean, people on Finch are going to be upset. That's 50 households right there. You know, people on Crawford are going to be upset. That's another 75. More people on Ingalls are going to be upset. In total, there's about 200 households where people have legitimate concerns. And this report being as vague as it is, all it says is that we're going to pack 350 dwellings into the gray shaded area without any idea how that's going to happen, without any idea what kind of impact it has on schools or traffic. And we already have those traffic concerns that haven't been addressed for quite a few years.
Director Sanat.
Yeah, I just have a point of order. Can we just do this on receipt? I have a conflict on determination of the substance.
This is still on receipt?
Yeah, instead of having merits discussion
Okay.
right now.
Thank you. Director Dahl?
I don't know if we should be having this discussion on receipt or not, but the developer has already spent well over $1 million to put in a controlled intersection, Willow Creek Road. If you drive down Jubilee, that will be the main point of entrance and exit of the subdivision. It would also possibly even be able to be used by the people on Finch Road that are waiting for 35 minutes to make a left-hand turn. So I think that if anything, this would support your traffic problem.
Okay.
And it was an application made in 2018 that was held back because of COVID for multiple years.
Okay, we're still on receipt, so why don't we get into the meat on the next? Okay? All in favor on receipt? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried.
Now I declare my conflict as a business matter.
There you go. Okay, so we have B, that the city of Campbell River be advised that the Strathcona Regional District has no concerns regarding the proposed expansion of the Campbell River urban containment boundaries south of Jubilee as identified in the May 3rd, 2023 report from the CAO. Do I have a mover? Director Kerr?
I'll
Director
second.
Dahl? Discussion. Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. One of my questions about this application is really, because the maps are so vague, it's hard to tell if there are any watersheds that are going to be impacted materially by a subdivision going in there. It looks like there's a creek, but it's really hard to tell from the map. It would be really nice to have better quality information.
Again, don't think that level of work happens yet. I mean, the city has line of sight on all that, of course. But at this point, you know, again, not to repeat myself, but the urban containment boundary is a boundary either they accept development within or they don't. And so you're not going to do much if you're not in. So those details will come to the city, you know, if and when the boundary is expanded, but you're not going to see them at this point in time. I don't think they exist likely.
Director Kerr, then Director Rice.
Director Wally.
Oh, then Wally, and then Rice.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think concerns over environment, concerns over transportation, road networks, that sort of thing. Let me tell you, it's amazing that any subdivisions get approved in Campbell River because of all the attention paid to both those matters. So any concerns, I would suggest, are well taken care of by the processes, the subdivision processes that have to go through before anything happens in terms of development. So this is, you know, it's chicken and egg, and I think this is the first step to get that line transferred.
Okay, Director Wally?
So this process would go to public hearing, and at that time, I expect it to be well advertised, and Area D residents would be aware of it, and they'd have a good opportunity there to express their concerns. So just a matter of advertising, it'd be significant that the Area D residents actually are notified.
As a non-planner, I believe that there's a OCP amendment required here, which there would be a public hearing process involved in it.
Director Rice?
And again, just to expand on Director Wally's comments, you know, I do want to make sure that Area D residents do have an opportunity to express concerns, you know, and make sure that they are going to be heard. This was probably one of the biggest items that I got talked about last year when I was out knocking on doors. So people have known that this was coming for a while. We all saw it when you did the intersection on Jubilee. And people are very concerned what's going to happen to their lifestyles. I mean, Finch is rather unique in that we've got a dead-end road with just local traffic. It's probably the only street in Area D that doesn't have, you know, speeders. It's quiet, all of those things. And when I take a look at the map, I see an exit, you know, basically from this new proposed subdivision coming down Bayer right to Crawford. So again, you know, I'm not disputing the facts on this, but it looks like there is plans for an exit to come out on Crawford. And right now, I mean, at the speed that the Department of, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure is moving, I mean, I don't know when we can effectively address, but Area D has had serious traffic problems for how many years? And this could really, you know, add to it. Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the process that's put in place for any development or any subdivision addresses or has the opportunity for any individual to have the ability to ask those questions and to their satisfaction. That whole process is designed for that public engagement piece. So it really, and as our CAO pointed out, with an amendment to the OCP, that's also goes out to the public. Director Dahl, then Chapman.
So before I came down here, once I saw that this was on the agenda, I reached out to Andy Gaylor, who is the Director of Community Planning and Livability, and talked to him about specifically the consultation. His words, as part of the process, the applicant will be required to host a neighborhood public meeting. As part of this, letters will be circulated to affected properties, including those residing on Finch Road within Area D. Now, that doesn't mean that they even need to connect to Area D. And maybe they would be better off not to connect to Area D. But those decisions will be yet to be made.
Again, thank you for the comments. That piece of information would have been nice to have had in the report. You know, so good to know at this point. I'm just letting it be known that this is not going to sit well with a lot of people. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Chapman, you got the last say.
Chair, thank you. In large subdivisions, normally the city asks for a traffic study to be done. And so design work can be done as to how best to handle the traffic. So that's all to be determined, as you appropriately mentioned earlier. I just wanted to mention traffic studies are often used in large subdivisions.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we had the discussion. So now we have the part on B where we go to all in favor. Opposed? Director Rice and Director Davis. And that's all I can see. Okay, the motion is passed.
Invite Susan back.
Do I invite Susan back? I don't know. Does she bring donuts?
It's too short to get donuts.
Too short a time? I guess we should have went longer. Okay. Number 10, First Nations Cultural Awareness and Training Plan. Move receipt. Director Wally, Director Colburn, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. B, that the 2023 First Nations Training and Awareness Program, as outlined on April 20th, 23, report from the CAO be implemented.
So moved. Mawinnie.
Mawinnie and Colburn. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. LGMA 2023-2024 Overseas Management Exchange Program. Report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Colburn, Mawinnie. CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So LGMA has a neat exchange opportunity for local government staff to apply for. It's a program where you exchange with New Zealand for a couple weeks. All costs are covered by LGMA. Go and experience communities in that country and report back, and then do the same thing. They come to our communities. Costs are covered throughout the program, and I think it's a great opportunity to kind of network, share, find out some new ideas, and do the same for the other communities. So happy to answer any questions.
Who's first? No? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Sorry? Is there options in the report? Excuse me. Director Mawinnie?
I would like to move that the regional district approve staff participation in the 2023-2024 LGMA Overseas Manager Exchange Program.
Second, Colburn.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Chancellor Oil Spill. Sorry, what? What am I waiting for? No, I missed one? No, I didn't miss any.
Okay, sorry, my bad.
I know you're just used to me missing stuff. Did you want to, No. No, you're good? Okay, I'm just saying.
So I believe that we have a video that will play while the presenters are.
We have a video.
So if I can, have we voted on receipt?
No,
Or yeah,
No,
let's
not
do
yet.
that, Yeah.
I was getting there.
You-
but
I
then
would move that
was-
staff give a verbal presentation or verbal report on the recent oil spill in Chancellor's Sound and Electoral Area C.
Thank you.
Second, Ganesh.
Vinesh.
Thank you. So quick introduction before our team speaks to this. So there was an incident out there with the diesel truck spill, and questions came in. And I thought it was a good opportunity to bring awareness to the group of what our emergency services coordination does, educational tools for them to understand. And at the same time, we have a bit of an update. And there was what I thought was just a pretty cool video on the recovery of the truck that I thought, as we presented, you could watch at the same time. And I thought it was pretty neat on how that diesel truck was recovered. So I'll pass it to Sean and Casey, and just to start with the high level of, what that expectation of the regional district, when you're looking at our emergency services, protective services crew, you're seeing the whole department at the end of the table here. So that's part of the context of them delivering what their role in these things. We don't need volume. Yeah. People can watch while you talk. This is a 4.5-minute video, so we thought, geez, we'll try and do two things at once.
Thanks, Dave. So through the chair, there's 4 key messages that I'm hoping the board can take away from me and Casey's talk today. The first key message will be an overview of this event itself. The second key message is the role of the Strathcona Emergency Program, of which there are 2 of us during these types of events, which in a high level is to provide support to the incident command post that has jurisdiction over the event if and when requested. that we have staff on call 24/7 to respond to assist the incident command post, which me and Casey share that responsibility. And the fourth is that it's the role of the Strathcona Emergency Program to provide coordination, leadership, and support for our First Nations municipalities and electoral areas. So I'm going to turn it over to Casey, our Protective Services Assistant. She's going to talk more about one, the overview of the event, then she'll turn it back to me on two, which is about the SRD support.
So please bear with me. This is my first time at the board table. As of this moment in time, I receive emails from the Coast Guard. We are a resource person for their operations. As you can see from what's on the video, we don't have the equipment for that. The tanker truck went in the water, and approximately 2 to 4 hours later, the first email was issued by Coast Guard. The second subsequent email came in about an hour after that, calling a Zoom meeting at 9 o'clock at night on the 20th of April. That meeting was simply to identify what had happened, where the vehicle was located, and what material facts they had, what resources had been requested and mobilized, and to identify who the key players were in that moment on the water over top of the fuel truck. The following Zoom call was the next day on the 21st. That identified what the incident command structure was, who the key players were there. There was 4 individuals that were identified as being needed on that site. While it was a large amount of diesel fuel in the truck, and while it was also multiple jurisdictions, Coast Guard was the primary one to make decisions. At that point, they had mobilized, the Guardians were in the area helping and supporting. The owner of the barge that was delivering the fuel truck before it rolled off the back had gone through all of the processes of identifying and reporting what was needed. And the spill response for marine environments had also been mobilized at that point. That was the second phone call, and that was the last phone call. We would be a resource to the event if they required housing for staff and personnel coming in. In a marine environment, they house their own staff on the vessels. All of their trained personnel that are required for that activity are there, or based in larger centers where they are part of a think tank that is going to help with the plans for extraction and mobilizing more resources. After that, I was in receipt of daily to periodic emails on updates on what was happening. If there wasn't anything of substance to report to Sean, I didn't report to him. There was no need for us to mobilize. We were an unused resource in a larger response.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, in 2 minutes, everybody's phone is going to go off with an emergency test system.
We timed that poorly. You're 2 minutes early there.
Director Wally.
Yeah, just a question to staff. Is that little video clip available on the regional district website for people to look at?
We can make it available, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm
it's-
sure there's
it's-
lots of interest.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, yeah, how they extracted that.
Directors, do you have any questions? Any answers?
Yeah.
Yep, we're just watching the video.
It's over.
It's over? There we go. Was there anything else you'd like to add? Nope. You're good? Thank you very much.
Mine was just the specifics of the call. I happened to check that email at that time and went, oh, hey, it's my backyard.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, we're still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Bylaw 495.
Move receipt.
Thank you. Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that bylaw 495 be given third reading.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice, you're opposite on your mic. There we go. And Director Wally, second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that bylaw 495 be given Campbell River Area Zoning Bylaw 1991, amended number 62, now be reconsidered and finally passed and adopted.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice, Director Wally, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Bylaw 496, electoral area. There you go.
It's such a pleasant sound, isn't it?
I was gonna say, I can't say. Okay, remember, this is just a test. Okay, bylaw 496, electoral area D, building height regulation. Report
Move
for
receipt.
Thank you. Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that bylaw 496 be given third reading.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice, Director Wally.
Second, Vinesh.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that number 496 being Campbell River Area Zoning Bylaw 1991, Amendment number 63, now be reconsidered and finally passed and adopted.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice? Second. Director Mulvaney?
Second, Vinesh.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Bylaw 499, Strathcona Connected Coast Board Incorporation. The report from the CEO be received.
Move receipt, Chapman.
Chapman, and then Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that bylaw 499 being the bylaw to amend the articles of incorporation for the Strathcona Connected Coast Network Corporation is now introduced and read for the first time.
So moved.
Director Chapman? Second? Director Wally? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the rules be suspended for bylaw 499, given second and third readings.
So moved.
Director Chapman? Director Wally? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the bylaw 499, being the Regional Broadband Corporation Authorization Bylaw 2018, Amendment number 3, be reconsidered and finally passed and adopted.
So moved.
Director Chapman? Director Wally, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Correspondence. That would be 1 through 5. To be received.
Could we pull number 5, please?
Can we pull
Second.
4 too, please?
I'm sorry? Did you say pull 4? 1 through 3. So 1 through 3 be approved.
Second.
Second, Director Wally, Chapman, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. We'll start with 4.
I'll move receipt of 4, the funding, the tsunami mapping project.
Second, Director Wally.
It really has nothing to do with the funding. It's about the project itself. I just wanted to let the board know that they did the kind of rolling 11th relative tsunami video project, and we viewed it I viewed it twice actually at the community hall in Zavalis, and it is amazing. So as part of this project, to get that Indigenous lens about historical knowledge as well, and putting that into practice with our preparedness, it was just a really phenomenal video and process, and I just wanted to thank the people who put that together. Of course, our Protective Services Manager, the researchers, the people, the elders who shared their story. It was just, yeah, it was awesome, so
Thank you. Further discussion on 4? Okay, we'll go to 5 before we go to the receipt of both. Can we do that? No. Oh, for 4 only? Yes, 4. Oh, okay.
So moved.
Thank you. You moved it. That was the second already. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Number 5, Director Mowini.
I would like to move receipt, and I have a subsequent of the correspondence from the SLAM and
Right? Second? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Go ahead with subsequent.
Thank you. I would like to refer this correspondence from the SLAM and First Nation to the First Nations Relations Committee, please.
Thank you.
Second, Vinesh.
Vinesh? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Electric vehicle charging stations. That the May 4th, 2023 report from Director Rice regarding electric vehicle charging stations be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice, Director Colburn. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. You got a post? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it down. I apologize. Director Rice?
I did have a proposed motion there, that staff prepare a report on grant opportunities that support funding for the installation of EV charging stations in the regional district.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Director Davis, discussion. Director Mowini?
Thank you. I think this is a great idea. I would maybe like to offer that perhaps, as well as preparing a report on current grant opportunities, we could somehow squeeze in there that advocating with BC Hydro and that they could be available in convenient locations in the future.
I'll take that as direction to staff.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? See none, carried. Well, look at that. Closed session, that the report from the CAO be received.
So moved, Colburn.
Second, Wally. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? See none, carried. And that the meeting will be closed to the public for consideration matters deemed to be fall within the parameters of subsections 90-1, C, G, H, I, N, O, 92, 90, pardon me, bracket 2, and B and A of the community charter.
Moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Chapman, all in favor? It is done. So we go termination of the regular meeting? Nope, we just wait on that?